In Iran, families are accusing the authorities of failing to stop a months-long series of poison attacks on schoolgirls. More than 13,000 cases of gas poisoning have been registered. Amnesty International says the attacks have targeted 300 girls' schools. Some government critics believe the poisonings are retaliation for last autumn's nationwide anti-regime demonstrations. But it's not clear who is responsible. Iran's supreme leader, Ayotollah Ali Khamenei, has described the poisonings as an unforgivable crime. Now I'm joined from London by Negin Shiraghaei. She's an Iranian-British activist and women's rights campaigner. Negin, thanks for joining us. These poisonings of young girls are obviously continuing. How frequent are they still and how widespread?
So they started around 30th of November. The first case we've seen was 30th of November last year, and they continue to grow since then. We had almost 3 weeks of school holidays towards the end of the March. But since schools reopened, we had them every day in almost every province in the country. We've seen cases since November, and it's quite widespread. There are some schools that had been attacked twice or 3 times. But the thing that links most of these schools together is that in almost every school that we checked, there has been some sort of disobedience. It's either writing slogans on the walls, or bringing down the pictures of the supreme leader, or not wearing hijab as a way of civil disobedience. That's been happening on a daily basis now in the country. That happens in the schools as well. So we know the supreme leader before some months ago said that the schoolgirls needs to be punished. The punishment shouldn't be harsh, but they should be punished for their disobedience. And almost 2 weeks after that, it was 30th of November, and we saw these attacks started.
So who is behind these poisonings then?
Oh, it's quite difficult to say. So more than 100 people has been arrested by the government, claiming they had some sort of hand in the attacks. Some of them were journalists who reported on the attacks. We know one case of a father and daughter who went to the school after the attack to record and film it, send it outside, and they've been arrested as well. We haven't seen any judgment on the cases, but also some officials mentioned that part of the people who were doing the attacks were close and allies of the government. And they've been guided, and they're not going to repeat it in that sort of language, which is a pattern that we've seen from the Iranian regime. They don't claim the responsibility, and always when they're doing something to dampen the protest or something like that in Iran, or disobedience, they create a kind of distance between themselves and the actual people who are, taking the orders and doing it. So it gives them a kind of deniability. And that's the same case. But when you look at the patterns of the attacks, the pattern of behavior by the Islamic Republic, it's not far-fetched to say it's somehow linked to the government. And we also know all of these schools have CCTV cameras in them. It's more than, how many months? It's like more than 5 months. We haven't seen any footage supporting the claims that the government says that this has been, orchestrated by the foreigners. But at the same time, we see a lot of arrests happening while you're using CCTV cameras on the streets, arrests of women who are not obeying the mandatory hijab, laws in Iran. So it's really complicated. Like, how can you not arrest them? How is it possible that you don't know who's behind this attack?
And again, Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, has condemned the poisonings and called for the perpetrators to be tracked down. Normally, his word is literally the law in Iran, but still no one has been charged with these crimes. So you do have the sense that the regime is more than just tolerating these poisonings.
Oh, yeah. So with Khamenei's speech, it's usually something like he would order something like the schoolgirls need to be punished. There are some cronies that would go after it. And then usually, and this is the pattern I've been mentioning, usually after a while, when this is, a lot of, people in the country go against it and say, like, this shouldn't happen, he would come out and say something, yeah, this should have stopped. But the actual stop, it completely depends on what he actually thinks and what he orders on the ground to his supporters. So it doesn't, the second time, it doesn't necessarily they would obey or not.
Very briefly, please, is this campaign to intimidate girls, is it working?
No, and that's the beauty of it, because even now, like, every day there are schoolgirls going to schools without wearing the mandatory hijab. We know that they've been disobedience inside the school continues, as well as on the streets. We know the family members, the moms and dads, they got their schools, some of their schools now, but it feels like there was a time that people were scared and thinking about not sending the girls to their schools. But there was a kind of consciousness all around the country that they should go and they should resist and continue the resistance.
Negin Shiraghaei, thank you very much for your input.